since we only have a little over an hour for this conversation. So welcome everyone. To begin with, may I please request the speakers to share their video and say hi to everyone. So very quickly, I am Mahima. I am part of Women Walk at Midnight. We are a feminist collective. And basically, we are a bunch of women who walk at midnight. And we're all women. I'm not able to walk as often as I'd like to because of the way the city is structured and mobilities are structured, but been a part of this conversation, both as someone practicing midnight walking for leisure, but also academically been engaging on this with this question of women, leisure spaces and city spaces. This is part of our series called Raaton Ki Baatein, Midnight Dialogues, which we began actually well before COVID, but during COVID, we sort of switched it to this online mode. And we just come together and talk about anything and everything related to the midnight, about women walking, claiming leisure, and city spaces. Last year in December, we had a very interesting crossover where we had Women Walk at Midnight in conversation with Why Loiter, as well as with a Blank Noise, and with a focus on their initiative of Meet to Sleep, which is basically women meeting to sleep in parks. And it was a fantastic conversation, but we feel we just barely scratched on the surface of what amazing things that are happening in feminist spaces, in city spaces, in online spaces, which are really taking this question of leisure very seriously. Feel free to drop in in the chat, introduce yourself, say hi, where are you joining us from? So leisure is finally being taken seriously, but leisure for women have never been easy. It is whether it's leisure as a time, leisure as an activity, leisure as a space, it has been a little difficult to claim, exercise, been difficult to rest, perhaps. So while we wait for more people to start, maybe I'd request you all to maybe participate and tell us, what does leisure mean for you? So you can just, I will share the Menti code for this. Wait, I forgot to share that. Okay, I've shared the Menti code in the chat, and you can click on that and tell us what does leisure mean for you by clicking on the Menti code.
I was just trying to translate that in Hindi because I'm seeing some of my folks are here, which I know will understand Hindi much better. हाँ, तो फुर्सत में आप फुर्सत का मतलब क्या है आपके लिए? उसको ये मेंटीमीटर की लिंक में अपने ख्याल उसमें डालने हैं, लिख देने, बेसिकली डालने नहीं है.
And while everyone is doing that, just to share some ground rules, this is a safe space, this is a respectful place. हम हिंदी इंग्लिश दोनों में बीच बीच में बात करेंगे, लेकिन अगर कोई चाहता है कि हम हिंदी में भी ट्रांसलेशंस दें या फिर इंग्लिश में भी ट्रांसलेशंस दें जो हम बोल रहे हैं, if anyone wants translations, we'll try our best to do it simultaneously, and we apologize if we're not able, if there are language barriers in this conversation और हम सब तक ना पहुंच पाए अगर, मगर जैसे हम रेगुलर कॉन्वर्सेशन करते हैं, ये कॉन्वर्सेशन भी आई थिंक हिंदी इंग्लिश दोनों के बीच चलती रहेगी. And I think some interesting responses are, वाह चाय किस्से और कहानियां, love that. Not having to fulfill tasks, काम नहीं करने घर पे, सही बात है. Resting, relaxing, existing freely, ability to free flow, sukoon, I think that's a word that really captures it. Okay. You can also vote in what responses resonate with you.
Mahima screen share nazar nahi aa raha. I can't see the Menti screen.
Sorry, let me try that again.
Thank you.
Okay, for some reason, something is going wrong. Let me try that again.
We can see it now.
Okay, you can see now? Great. Okay, so these are the kind of responses people have shared. Okay. And I think the next question I want you all to reflect on, when was the last time you were completely at rest? वो आखिरी समय कब था जब आप कंप्लीट सुकून में थे, रिलैक्स कर रहे थे, रेस्ट पे थे? ये एक पिक्चर एक्चुअली पिछली पिक्चर विमेन वॉक एट मिडनाइट की एक वॉक से थी. ये पिक्चर में मैं सोती हुई दिख रही हूँ ड्यूरिंग अ मीट टू स्लीप गैदरिंग इन अ पार्क इन दिल्ली. तो yes, responses. I think the same Mentimeter link पे आप अगर all of you can share, when was the last time you were completely at rest? Okay, while we have responses for this coming in, I want to now kickstart this conversation with Sadia and Surabhi from Girls at Dhabas and Women at Leisure. And from them, we will today hopefully hear about what is it like to find leisure in the everyday at Dhabas at midnight from Malika and Aman. How does leisure also have to do anything with risk, subversion, with fatigue? इसमें कमियां क्या हैं, challenges क्या हैं, मुश्किलें क्या हैं इस journey में? And with those some initial questions, I would like to hand over to Surabhi. Surabhi, would you like to come in and just share about your project? Sorry, someone is unmuted. If everyone else can be unmuted, thank you. And we also have some responses on when was the last time you were completely at rest. So Surabhi, over to you with some of those reflections and about your project.
Yeah. Should we let people keep writing, or are we stopped?
Yeah. People can keep writing and sharing on the Menti, and we will share the screen again towards the end.
Sounds good. Okay. Well, hello everyone, and thanks, Mahima. I'm actually genuinely very excited to actually see all of you people in the Sadia ko dekh rahi hu, Mahima ko dekh rahi hu, Malika, Aman, because I've heard of these initiatives. I've loved these initiatives. Like, it's good to see people who are running them. I run Project Basanti, Women at Leisure, and essentially over years it has become like this big repository of a lot of videos and photos of women and girls taking time out for themselves. It could mean, them being with people at leisure, them being alone at leisure. It also unpacks a lot of ways in which leisure looks like. It's currently exploring time, space, leisure, labor, all as feminist issues. But मतलब बहुत ही प्यार से it's trying to say कि अच्छा what gets revealed about yourself when you are at leisure. So one, you get, you build a solid revelation about yourself कि अच्छा क्या निकल के आ रहा है. It's a taste of your inner life. So it's beautiful to just watch what happens to people when they're at leisure, what shows up. So that's the project. That is what the project is about. And do you want me to talk about how it started as well, Mahima, right away? Okay. Well, it started. I've talked about it so many times, and yet every single time I have to start. It goes to like, now you're saying the same story all over again, but which part of it is staying with you right now? I had started it in 2017, few years after I had lost my mother. And a big realization that came to me after losing my mom was that I really didn't know her as a person. I mean, I knew her as my mother, like we have 4 siblings. So not even my siblings' mother, my mother, like my equation with her, right? And I was 23 when I had lost her. It was in 2014 when I had lost her. And so that when that, I think after her death, there was a lot of guilt. It was not grief. I mean, there was of course grief, but I remember guilt as the dominant emotion, like not knowing her enough. Like I actually just didn't know her, who she was, like what was her politics, what was her worldview, what did she think, beyond motherhood. And उनका context ये थे कि वो 8वीं तक पढ़ी थी. She had studied till 8th. She had grown up in a village in Bundelkhand, and she and my father moved away from both their villages to settle in a town far away to get us education and for my father to pursue his government job. So she was uprooted from her usual support system. So that was the context. And in this context, she was raising 4 kids where there was hardly any blueprint on how to raise kids in town, right? And do it in a way where, when you go back to your villages, they don't say कि अच्छा ये गड़बड़ कर दिया इनके साथ है ना. So she was at that job full time for all my life. Anyway, so I didn't really know her much. So I started this interview series with people in her life, asking them कि आपको माँ के बारे में क्या याद है? Like, what do you remember about her? In a way that because they would have known her in a certain way, I would get to know a certain aspect of her. And so a bunch of interviews happened with family and people around. And one of the interviews with हमारे मोहल्ले में एक आंटी हैं पड़ोस में, गांगले आंटी. And I asked her. In fact, I was visiting home and she had come to see me because she had come to, the house still was full of ma, right? So she had come to see that if I'm doing okay in that house, right? During vacations. And I asked her, what do you remember about mummy ke bare mein kya yaad hai? Like, what do you remember about her? And her immediate thought was, bhabhi bahut hi shaitan aur mazakiya thi. Like she was very goofy and she was very naughty. And I remember my mother in really fond ways, but still mazakiya and goofy and naughty are not the terms I would have ever described her in. Not in the first sentence. Like that wouldn't have been my opening line ever until she said it. Because to me, mummy to kaam karwati thi yaar. Like she was like she would get us do house chores. That was her job. Like घर का काम करना है, घर का काम सीखना है, तुमको पढ़ाई खत्म करनी है. That was all माँ. तो मम्मी नहीं मेरे को मजाकिया और शैतान दिखती थी. मतलब I have diary entries talking about how my mother doesn't love me because she makes me do so much घर का काम. And I was deeply convinced कि मम्मी तो नहीं प्यार व्यार करती है. मम्मी को तो बिल्कुल काम ही चाहिए लाइफ में. And when she said that, I remember I felt so moved when she said it. And I was like, huh? And then and then she goes, this is an obvious fact. She goes into and she says, हाँ भाभी तो जब भी हम शाम को सब बैठती थी 4-5 हम. So there were a group of 5-6 ladies in the neighborhood where they would sit between 5 to 6, mostly on our own angan, and that was their everyday leisure, right? खाना बनाने से पहले, शाम का डिनर से पहले. And she said जब भी भाभी नीचे आती थी and इतना हंसी मजाक इतना. And she said in Nimadi, my hometown is in Nimad, and she said हाँ तो रड़ी पड़ी जाओ, which is like that we will laugh so much because that's the kind of her job in that gathering, in that small setting, everyday basis would be to make silly jokes and to give a lot of positive talk. Basically, that was my mother's job. Again, not something that I had seen her in the house. And then like the series of things started unpacking, right? Like I had seen her growing up. It's just that there were certain visuals that were just not important enough for me to register them as a moment. So Holi, हमारे यहाँ रंग पंचमी होती है खरगोन में 5 days after Holi, and usually it's women and children who play together, and men and boys go outside in the morning. तो औरतें घर का काम खत्म करेंगी and we'll all get together, color से खेलेंगे, and everyone would have made something at their home जो कि एक किसी के आंगन में लेके आया जाएगा. Everyone will bring something and we are supposed to just enjoy. And उस समय तो ऐसा नहीं होता था कि स्पीकर है किसी के पास. We were all in like a very middle class sweet मोहल्ला, but ऐसे स्पीकर नहीं होते थे और औरतें तो चलाती नहीं थी स्पीकर. So it was all on them to entertain themselves, right? And I remember my mother would create such a big ruckus in that setup. Now I think that was a ruckus. According to them, that was a lot of fun. Like she would do this major raunchy role plays. मतलब मेरे को शर्म आती थी उस समय एज ए किड कि मम्मी ये क्यों कर रही है, like why is she was one very tall, she's broad, and she would just take over the stage. She would just become like a drunk husband, a drunk lover, or a सासू माँ जिसके ऊपर bahu is doing all winning argument is happening. And all the women would just laugh. Oh my God. It used to be a scene. I keep calling it used to be an annual auntie improv. कुछ कुछ घुस जाएंगी अंदर, कुछ शर्म शर्म के फिर भी देखेंगे क्या चल रहा है, And what I remember is that I think that came from her roots in Bundelkhand. So in Bundelkhand, there are so many things where women, औरतें घूंघट करती हैं बुंदेलखंड में mostly. They're not supposed, daughter-in-laws and wives are not supposed to um, show their faces in the village. And there are a lot of restrictions. What daughter-in-law specifically cannot do and do, right? So do and not do. But there are still these deep pockets where women have found their ways of intense leisure. And a lot, जैसे शादी के घर में बारात में women are not allowed to go in Bundelkhand, women and girls. So I remember that उसके तो जब औरतें जब गांव से बारात निकल रही होती, when the men and boys are leaving, there is a tradition called God, I'm forgetting the name. I always Jugia, where women, this bhabis and all the bahus, basically wear pant shirt. घूंघट रहेगा, घूंघट कहीं नहीं जा रहा है, but they'll put on pant shirt over their saris, and then घूंघट का बहुत अच्छे से इस्तेमाल करके what they will do, because their face is not visible, they'll have big dandas in their hands and beat the hell out of all the men who are leaving for the barat. And who used to lead this party? My mother, from what I remember, like what I've seen her do when I was in the age where I could make memories of this moment, right? And who would get mostly beaten? My father. और ये कोई नहीं है, प्यार व्यार से नहीं हो रहा है, like it's not like she बस प्यार से like symbolically मार रहे हैं. She would actually hit them, and not her, like all the women, they would actually hit them. Like men would literally run around and they would sneakily find a way कि जब वो आरती हो रही होती है, when they are supposed to send away, they'll find a way when men are in a place where they can be beaten, so then they spread out, right? So all of this, like she had this within her. That just kept coming over and over. Like I have so many such instances which have come again, resurfaced in a memory, that my mother was that. And at the same time, she was also the taskmaster in the house. And I think from there, the question just became like in my face that mummy jab mummy nahi thi to kya thi? Who was she when she was not my mother? And yeah, so I'm going to stop here. So from them, I've been just clicking photographs and videos obsessively, and now a lot of people contribute to the project. So I actually get a kind of sneak peek into people's living rooms because people share really nice moments. So that's the context in which the project began. So I'll keep quiet. I think I took more time.
No, that was it was so nice hearing the origin story, Surabhi, because मुझे नहीं पता था, और that it's linked to your mother. घूम फिर के सब कुछ मम्मी पे वापस आता है. ये मुझे बाद में I came to this realization later with girl.
Sorry, I'm just gonna add
No,
one
but
last thing because he said mom ka connection. Basanti was actually her name.
oh, I was going to ask.
Yeah. So Basanti was her name, and it felt really appropriate because Basanti means spring, right? Like she was born on Basant Panchami. And to me, leisure is spring. Like it allows, the springing of yourself, this flourishing of yourself. But okay, I'm gonna keep quiet now. I want to know.
No, please, we can keep. And I thought it was your name. I'm like, ये बसंती है जो चलाती है women.
I love that. I love that. That has made they made my mother in my everyday memory so vibrant, because a lot of people send me messages, hi Basanti, or someone would say, oh, you have created Basanti. And in my head, I'm like, kind
wow.
of. So and the funny thing is, you don't call out your parents' name even when they're alive. So there is no reason to say their name out loud, especially when they're.
Bilkul, you're right. Yeah.
When people keep saying Basanti, Basanti, like her grief has become like a beautiful grief of not having her around, just like a beautiful bouquet now. Like every time someone says Basanti, like a new memory comes up, right?
And it's such a joy-giving, spring-giving project. I really feel that, like time, labor, there are all these political questions, but at the heart of it, just that window of light and joy, and then remembering when you felt that way. अच्छा, मेरी कहानी में अम्मी बहुत देर से आई. It was very like we weren't thinking about. I think that there was a point where it would come up, but I'm remembering this one point many years down, maybe 3 years after Girls at Dhabas had officially started, and my mother and I were hanging out, and we just organically ended up taking a walk in the neighborhood or loiter kar rahe hain. And I had this moment of like, what is happening? How is this? How is this real? How is this possible? Because in my imagination growing up, not only was that not possible for me, but also it wasn't possible together. But then now that I'm also older and retrospectively I'm thinking about so many of these things, I think it's not even it's not possible. It's what you were saying is we don't always notice it. इतनी script पे हम चल रहे होते हैं कि there are, it's not like my mom and I didn't take walks when I was younger या जो भी वो सब होता था, but there's a kind of patriarchal script that you're following, that women do this, don't do this, and then everything you're noticing and recording is kind of tallying with that. So with Girls at Dhabas, I think the kind of, once we named it and once we said हम करना क्या चाह रहे हैं, तब एक group जमा हुआ था जिनमें काफी मेरी, they were my friends or acquaintances who we felt like were on the same page with, and we just made a Facebook page and Tumblr, asking women to send in photos of existing unconventionally in public spaces. पहले हम occupying बोलते थे, फिर हमने वो word छोड़ा. अच्छा, language भी बदलती है with time. uh,
Absolutely.
you know,
Thinking बदल
yeah,
रही है, language भी
yeah.
बदल रही है, बिल्कुल.
हाँ, बिल्कुल. तो unconventional ways in public spaces, and really I think if I were to describe it in one sentence, it was an anti-respectability collective. We were saying कि respectability को खत्म करो, ये इज्जत वाली बकवास को जरा हम फेंकें. Because that is linked to it. I think it's the foundation, the core of the lack of bodily autonomy. It's linked to mobility, it's linked to work, it's linked to labor. So everything that Surabhi was talking about in the beginning, time, labor, where do you work, how do you work, what you wear, like these are not separate questions to me. And I think all of our different collectives are engaging with that idea कि ये सब जुड़ा हुआ है. तो वो जो एक कीड़ा होता है जो बचपन में हम सब ने महसूस किया है, कीड़ा like a worm that we all feel when we're younger, of feeling free, and you're curious about your space, your city, your land. You venture out, you take risks, get into trouble. There's a playfulness जो कि over the years it's chipped away, justified by patriarchy, religion, respectability, middle class morality, जो भी आप उसको कहें. तो वो कीड़ा मम्मी में भी था, हम में भी है. And I have a similar connection there, where now that I talk to my mom, and now we have a very different relationship, and she has all these stories of, ओ मैं चुपके से यहाँ जाके सिगरेट पीती थी, ओ मैं एक दफा मूवी देखने गई थी. And I look at her and I'm like, you were not happy when Girls at Dhabas was happening, and you would ask him, कि मेरी बेटी कैसे है, और अब मैं आपको बोल रही हूँ कि clearly ये आपकी ही बेटी है, because you had the same कीड़ा. But I think all these projects are about that कीड़ा, that worm, that loosening and playfulness that we are robbed of. I really think the word, मुझे लगा छीना जाता है हमसे, हमें फिर जबरदस्ती उसको ना अंदर से खींच के वापस सिखाना पड़ता है कि ये हमारा हक है. और हक के, I mean, rights is still such a legal kind of term. I think this is beyond that. This is primal. This is primal. This is spiritually. This is the spiritual core of. वो आप कह रही थी ना, you who are you? Who are you actually? When you remove all of these labels and expectation and identities and roles, and not to say they don't matter, but
Yeah.
they do limit us.
Yeah.
So
I have just 2 points. You said that now you're at a stage with your mom where you can ask her about her girlhood.
hmm,
I cannot tell you how many times. Like I lost her when I was 23, right?
hmm,
And I had left home like 17, 18. And तुम ना अपनी जिंदगी में इतने मगन हो जाते हो ना, like 18 you've gone to a big city for studying, like you don't care about anything else, है ना? So I didn't share the same relationship like what you have with her now. I wasn't at that stage. My sister was like she's 16.
hmm,
So माँ के साथ she had a सहेली वाला transition had happened. For me she was
hmm,
still मम्मी only कि मम्मी है ना यार, मम्मी पूछेंगी खाना खाया कि नहीं खाया. And now so many instances, both life milestones and just everyday life, I often think कि मम्मी क्या बोलती इस पे. And especially
hmm,
now I have the language of feminism now. now you have language of feminism, now you have understanding of the world, now you have understanding of yourself also. तुम कहाँ खड़े हो, क्यों खड़े हो, तुम्हारी सोच क्या है, what is my world view, why it has become the way it has become. And now that that curiosity to know her is so intense.
Hmm.
कि अच्छा मम्मी इस पे क्या बोलती, अच्छा
Hmm.
मम्मी और क्या बोलती. And I recently just started reaching out again to my relatives to ask her ki I want to know more about Basanti's leisure.
Hmm.
Because so far the logging is what I remember and what my family, my immediate family has said. Now I want to know her peer बहुएं, like my चाची
Hmm.
उनके अकॉर्डिंग, क्योंकि वो सारे घूंघट में ही होते थे अंदर, सबके सब अंदर होते थे.
Hmm. Right.
जैसे ना उनको फोटो में हंसना, मतलब बुंदेलखंड में अभी भी मतलब मुझे याद है मम्मी को हंसाने के लिए आई यूज्ड टू डू द होल एक्ट एंड देन शी वुड स्माइल.
Hmm.
Otherwise it was not a good thing to smile in a
Hmm.
photograph. But I remember this a small black and white photograph of her and Choti Chachi, and she's also no more. But my mother dragging her and telling her कि चल चल अपन ना हंस के फोटो खिंचाएंगे, right? तो
Yeah.
and even there is a anecdote about wristwatch. My mother really wanted a wristwatch,
Hmm.
which is unheard of in बुंदेलखंड की, मतलब गांव में तुम खेती कर रहे हो, तुमको wristwatch क्यों चाहिए वहां पे, कोई पहनता ही नहीं था. Nobody would wear wristwatch. And she really wanted a wristwatch, and my father eventually got her a wristwatch, but she didn't touch it because my father had gotten it after making some commentary about it कि तुमको
Hmm.
बड़ी that, right? But I had that wristwatch after she died, and I was like यार ये क्या, मतलब I want to know who she was as
Yeah.
a girl.
ये जो सवाल you ask, what would mummy think or do? So what do you think mummy would think of your Project Basanti?
Sadia, you're gonna make me cry because I really don't know. I
Allah.
really don't know. Um,
Hmm.
you don't pay attention to women in your life.
Yeah, we don't.
We don't. Um, and it is the grandness of their love, maybe, but they make things so, their love is so obvious in some sense that I regret that. I
Hmm.
really know. I mean, she would have been very amused, I guess, but I don't know what exactly would she have said, and
Hmm.
so yeah.
Big
This
hug. Yeah.
but the
Um,
second thing, go ahead. You wanted to say something.
um, just that this is such a relatable conversation, and unfortunately, I think, or now fortunately, my mother found leisure after my father passed away. Because
Hmm.
till that time, all
Understandable.
her life was care work and domestic work for my father and for my grandparents. And now she's living alone in a flat for the first time. She has her own, she owns her time.
Yeah.
And she has friends. I've never seen her have friends and have chai parties with them. So very relatable. And I
Yeah.
think it's amazing that we're discussing this in this space. Sadia, sorry.
No,
Yeah.
no, I'm thinking about my mother because she's we live in the same city. I don't live with her, but हम मिलते रहते हैं. Again, not enough. What you're saying, I know I don't give this relationship enough attention, even though, yeah. But I'm thinking about her leisure, and she was cheated on by my father. And the way that वो धचका जो patriarchy से आपको लगता है ना एक दफा, that changes you and transforms you. And I know it can take many shapes, but the moment you realize that this patriarchy game is just a scam and there is no reward, कि कुछ, being a respectable woman or being a good woman or being a good wife, daughter, whatever, isn't going to earn you any guarantees. और आपको तो, and I'm just thinking of how that becomes like a towards freedom, like a real break in your body, in yourself. So for her, I really saw that वो gym जाती हैं अब और वो walks पे जाती हैं और वो मतलब she just kind of like actually life नहीं मैं trust करती तो what am I doing, what do I want to do? And I'm thinking about how, but why is that, why should it take that, why should
Yeah,
it
yeah.
take
I
a
was
betrayal for you to finally realize that wake up, what are you doing, why इतना ज्यादा ingrained है हमारे अंदर
तो
the
मेरी
limit. Yeah.
yeah, मेरी तो अभी नई पॉलिटिक्स शुरू हो रही है. I'm still
Hmm.
trying to frame it, articulate it. So in as many such conversations I can try to articulate it, it becomes better. Is that rejecting poking of patriarchy, which is to say,
हाँ.
हमारे ना स्टैंडर्ड्स जो है ना फेमिनिज्म के, वो उतने लेवल पे सेट हैं जितने आदमियों ने हमको, या पेट्रियार्की, नॉट जस्ट आदमी ने, पेट्रियार्की ने हमको तंग किया है. सो
हाँ.
वी आर कॉन्स्टेंटली इन अ रिएक्टिव स्टेट, इन अ सेंस कि हमारी भाषा सारी उसी के, ऑल आवर लैंग्वेज रिवॉल्व्स अराउंड हाउ व्हाट पेट्रियार्की हैज डन टू अस. सो वी आर स्टक एट द लेवल ऑफ, हमारा लेवल उतना है जितना हमको पोकिंग किया है. तूने मेरे को ऐसा, इट्स लाइक अ प्रॉपर दादागिरी दैट हैपेंस बिटवीन अस एंड द पेट्रियार्की. तू यू नो लाइक, तू नहीं
Yeah.
पता, मैं कर लूंगी, नहीं तू नहीं कर पाएगी, नहीं मैं कर लूंगी. And I'll give you an example of that. So one of my dear friends, I mean, she became my friend after whatever. She's a professor at IIT Delhi, and she reached out. She's working on this urban spaces and safety, and she wanted my opinion on it. And I remember telling her कि safety का benchmark public space में किसने बनाया? मतलब
Yeah.
हमको, you know, because patriarchy told you roads are not safe for women, so
Yeah.
now we want to fight for safety. बट वो तो
हाँ.
सेफ्टी का तो पेट्रियार्की ने बनाया, तुम तो कुछ और लेवल बना सकते थे ना. To me that, so I was telling her that to me the benchmark is leisure, not safety.
Beautiful.
Because if I can dance on a street, that means I own the street. That means I belong to that street. And safety is a subset of it.
बिल्कुल.
तो मैं सेफ्टी की बातें क्यों करूं? मैं तो लीजर की बातें करूंगी. सेफ्टी तो पेट्रियार्की की पोकिंग है ना. इट्स अ पोकिंग ऑफ द पेट्रियार्की. आई एम नॉट सेटल्ड टू व्हाट पेट्रियार्की इज पोकिंग मी. I don't want to play that dadagiri or didagiri game with patriarchy. I'm gonna reveal, if I wasn't poked by patriarchy, what is it that I would have created? In these two examples, I'm just thinking that both these women lost a chance to be deeply romantically love someone. And I get it, they've gotten more time, but romance is beautiful. And I wish they get more romance in their life.
Yeah, yeah, and I think bilkul what you're saying, romance is beautiful, and romance is what makes imagination possible ना. Actually आपकी imagination को कैद करके रखा हुआ है. That is the fundamental, I
You
think,
said it.
assault, you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just thinking with what you're saying is ke poking of patriarchy is such a great way to put it. We meet it there. We're like, okay, you're throwing this at me. How do we're like defensive, and then, you know, अभी औरत मार्च हुआ है कराची में. I was just talking to a friend and we were just reflecting on how the visuals were again just so, you know, reactionary, like violent, like
Yeah.
एक मर्द बना हुआ है, उसको हम पत्थर फेंक रहे हैं, कब्रें बनी हुई हैं. So it's the same cruelty that is being उसी हद तक हम बात करें, but उसके आगे क्या है? Another phrase I've heard used, which I love, is like we are in a crisis of feminist imagination.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think with leisure, with pleasure, with everyday habits, you know, where you can take it for granted. कि मैं बिला झिझक, I was thinking earlier today, what is kind of my measure of when I feel that is, you know, when I sing on the street without thinking with
Yeah,
somebody,
very true.
right?
Very
बिल्कुल सोच के नहीं कि अभी मैं गा सकती हूँ या नहीं, बस आप गाना
true.
शुरू हो जाए.
And you're so right. I remember, so when Women at Leisure had started, for the longest time, it would have only one tiny phrase, Women at Leisure. That's it. It would have zero caption. I would not set any context. And part of it was me acting like, nahi, ye to obvious hai. Like, of course she's gonna take a nap. Of course, like it was in my head. Of course, at that time nobody really knew the project. So it was 100 people and me, and I would post a photograph and I'll run away from it. But it was me only putting a Women at Leisure and nothing else there, because I wanted it to be, kya re, ye to normal hai, isme kyun samjhaun main kisi. And now
Right, justify क्यों करें? Why do
हाँ,
we need to justify
हाँ,
and
हाँ.
explain?
और मेरे को ना, I've said this before, that there is an अत्याचार lens and then there is a bahar lens, right? I talk about this to my students sometimes, that अत्याचार का lens है जहाँ पे we are able to describe the problems, we are able to articulate it really well, we are able to name it कि अच्छा ये दिक्कत है. And thankfully women's movements and feminism have given us that, है ना,
Yes.
कि भाई ये तो गड़बड़ है, नहीं, क्योंकि अब तुमको किसी ने गैस लाइटिंग शब्द दे दिया है, यू आर एबल टू आर्ग्यू बैक व्हेन इट इज फीलिंग गुड इन योर टमी, बट यू डोंट नो व्हाट टू कॉल इट. नाउ यू हैव द लैंग्वेज कि अच्छा यहाँ पे डोमेस्टिक अब्यूज ना 5 तरीके से होता है, ये इस तरीके से होता है. सो देयर इज एन अत्याचार लेंस वेयर यू कैन एक्चुअली आर्टिकुलेट द प्रॉब्लम एंड सी द वर्ल्ड कहाँ पे क्या गड़बड़ है. बट देयर इज अ बाहर लेंस, springs that exist right now and
Yeah.
springs that are possible. And you need both in your feminist movements, not even just struggles, because we can't be forever busy in just fighting.
Yes.
You know, in
Yeah.
part of the resistance is to reject the resistance sometimes. Sometimes, you know.
Yeah. हाँ हर वक्त
हाँ,
हक
हर वक्त
तैयार
लड़ाई में उलझे हुए हैं. लाइक इट्स सो इजी दैट तुम्हारा रिमोट कंट्रोल इज विद अदर पीपल. तुमको जरा सा किसी ने कुछ बोला और तुम्हारा बिल्कुल मेरे को ऐसा कैसे बोला. अरे अरे उसका प्रॉब्लम है, उसने बोला. लाइक एट सम पॉइंट हाउ कैन वी क्रिएट आवर ओन फाउंडेशनल थिंग सो सॉलिड. आई एम नॉट सेइंग कि गुस्से का कोई रोल नहीं है. लाइक आई एम नॉट सेइंग कि ओ माय गॉड यू शुड बी ऑलवेज काम. नो, like I don't know. So I'm still trying to figure out my articulation of my new level of
Yeah.
politics.
नो ये जुड़ा हुआ है ना, मतलब ये स्ट्रक्चरल जो भी फाइट्स हैं, और वो भी जरूर जाहिर है हम सब लड़ रहे हैं अपनी अपनी जिंदगियों में, अपने अपने कलेक्टिव्स में, बट you bring yourself to that structural space. I think तो ये एक तनकीद, this is one criticism that girls at Dhabas got a lot, कि आप लोग जो है ना structural problems के साथ engage नहीं कर रहे हैं. You're not engaging with legal issues, you're not engaging with structural violence, but I don't agree with that, because I think that uh, we're talking about bodily autonomy and the right to your time and labor on an everyday level, right? अगर आपकी जिंदगी में वो नहीं है, अगर उसका भी आपको हिसाब देना है या हिसाब रखना है, तो आप स्ट्रक्चरल प्रॉब्लम्स में किस तरह, how are you going to show up for that, right? I think so. Again, I don't have the articulation इसका थोड़ा, I'm still thinking through it. It's stuff we've talked about, but I don't know if it's helpful to see them as separate. Is
They're
my
not.
response to the critic. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think one is you're saying that instead of just talking about freedom, we are creating experiences of embodying freedom. है ना. एक होता
Yes.
है आजादी की बात करना, दूसरा होता है आजादी महसूस करना. है
या
ना.
और एक होते हैं आजादी के टूल्स होते हैं ना, कि ठीक है मैं केस
हाँ,
फाइल कर सकती हूँ या मैं ये ज्वाइन कर सकती हूँ, ये टूल्स हैं, राइट? दे आर
बिल्कुल.
देयर, बट फॉर मी टू पार्टिसिपेट एंड शो अप इन दोस टूल्स विद फुल एजेंसी and
Yeah.
curiosity, wonder, engagement, participation, I need to have felt that in my own body, right?
Yeah. I also feel कि मुझे लगता है ना, ये आई एम गोइंग बैक टू दैट सर्वाइवल मोड जो हमारा है. हम वी आर इन सो रिएक्शनरी मोड ना बिकॉज ऑफ द ब्रेकिंग ऑफ द पेट्रियार्की. लाइक आई एम जस्ट ट्राइंग टू, मेरे को नहीं पता हु आर द पीपल हु हैव गिवन द क्रिटिसिज्म टू गर्ल्स ऑफ ढाबा. मतलब उनका कॉन्टेक्स्ट क्या है. बट आई एम जस्ट, इफ फॉर अ मिनट आई सिंपैथाइज विद देम, it seems that for them they're feeling, again I have zero context on this, so I'm just throwing, you know, that we're so stuck in the survival reactionary mode कि एक तो हम एक दूसरे की थोड़ी सी थोड़ा सा जान निकाल लेते हैं कि तुम क्यों नहीं ऐसा लड़ रही हो. है ना. मतलब एक तो लड़ने का एक तरीका नहीं है ना. दूसरा, सबको सारी लड़ाइयाँ लड़नी नहीं है, बिकॉज anyway if everyone is fighting all the fight they're not going to win any, right?
Yeah.
तीसरी, which fight is more important in this feminism's world cannot be just told to you in that straightforward ranking, you know. As long as there is democratizing of that feminist I would again not just say struggles, feminist creations.
Beautiful.
सादिया और सादिया का फेमिनिज्म एक तरीके की लहर चला रहा है, you know, कोई और एडवोकेट होगी उसका, और उसका ग्रुप कोई और लहर चला रहा होगा. And why do we, again, but because we are in that survival mode, in that fighting mode, then everything becomes a कि गर्ल्स एट ढाबा तो लग्जरी है. मतलब तुम लोगों के पास खाने को पैसा नहीं है, you know. And उसकी भी जगह है honestly, पर I fully agree with you that these are so interconnected.
They're helping each other, you know. कंधा आगे बढ़ाने वाली बात है. आप जुड़े हैं, and I love this reframing, Surabhi. Instead of saying feminist struggles, can we say feminist creations?
And that's the
What?
politics. Huh.
Yeah.
That's the politics that I want us to talk about, that politics of creation. You know, I think this about sometimes political groups, that there are political groups who are very clear in expressing their, let's say, religious beliefs. मतलब इन योर फेस वो करके बता देंगे कि हमारा तो यही रिलीजन है और हमारा रिलीजन ये बहुत बेस्ट है,
Hmm.
और हम बाकी टाइम क्या कर रहे होंगे, लॉट ऑफ पीपल हु डोंट लाइक दैट, नहीं ये तो बहुत गंदा किया आपने, ये तो बहुत पीस होना चाहिए, ये नहीं होना चाहिए,
Hmm.
वन रिलीजन इज
Hmm.
अबाउट। मैं बहुत बार सोचती हूँ, तुमने झंडे लगाए कहीं जाके कि अमन इज सबसे प्यारा? तुम लगा
Hmm.
देना चाहते कि झंडे जाके हम,
Hmm.
मैं भी उस ग्रुप का हिस्सा हूँ। So there is so much politics of fighting.
Yes.
Forget that there could be politics of creating also.
Yeah, there's too much politics of rejection or dissenting. I don't agree. Okay, so then do
Again,
the thing that you do
हाँ,
agree with.
ये तो
Make
तुम
it.
नया बनाओ ना। और again, I still I don't know who all is in the audience. I do want to mention that I'm not against the dissent. I think उसकी बहुत प्यारी जगह
Hmm.
है, और उसके बिना नई क्रिएशन शायद नहीं आएंगी,
Hmm.
पर जगह बहुत बड़ी है, and dissent can't take the full step, full
Yeah,
space. It
yeah.
exhausts you in a way that doesn't move you forward, and um, I don't know. Yeah.
बट
It exhausts.
यू नो
Yeah.
इस तरह की क्रिटिसिज्म बहुत सारे इस तरह के फेमिनिस्ट कलेक्टिव्स फेस करते हैं. इवन विमेन वॉक एट मिडनाइट एट सम लेवल हैज बीन criticized for not addressing structural issues or major issues of the day. And it's easy to dismiss collectives which are talking
Yeah.
about frivolousness, about levity, about leisure, about, and they're also very difficult to आई थिंक कैटेगराइज कि क्या है ये, कलेक्टिव है, ये प्रोटेस्ट है, ये
Sahi.
है क्या. मतलब जब आप गर्ल्स एट ढाबास की बात करो, विमेन वॉक एट मिडनाइट की बात करो, वाइलॉइटर की बात करो, ये है क्या. मतलब आप व्हेन वी आर ऑन द स्ट्रीट्स एट नाइट, हमसे पूछा जाता है आप कर क्या रहे हो. एंड difficult to move away from that framing of no, we're not an organized protest. It's we're claiming the everyday, right? But talking about criticisms a little bit more, and I know there are other criticisms also that we all have faced, and I was wondering if Malika, you'd also like to come in and reflect on some of the caste, class, language
Hmm.
levers of criticism that that come up repeatedly, and how do we sort of navigate that?
पता नहीं यार. हाय. पहले तो बहुत ही आई मीन दिस इज सच एन इंटरेस्टिंग कॉन्वर्जेशन. इतनी सारे नए थॉट्स हैं, इतनी सारी नई आर्टिकुलेशंस हैं, सुनने में बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है. देखो, मुझे लगता है कि सब लोग अपनी लोकेशन से अपने प्रोटेस्ट को शुरू करते हैं. जिसने जो देखा होता है, जिसने जो सहा होता है, जिसका जो जहां से होता है, उस लोकेशन से ही वो अपने आंदोलन को शुरू करते हैं. अब वो आंदोलन जो भी हो, वो आंदोलन चलने का हो, ढाबों पे बैठने का हो, आर्काइव करने का हो, अ, मुझे लगता है तो ये जा जा के पूछना कि मेरी माँ कौन थी, ये भी एक रेजिस्टेंस है. इफ यू आस्क मी, it's a form of assertion. It's a form of holding on to memory and not letting it get erased and wanting to write a different story, which is what I think in many ways, if you look at the page of Women at Leisure, it is insisting and saying मैं ये दर्ज करूंगी, आप वो दर्ज करो, मैं ये दर्ज करूंगी. कोई कोर्ट में दर्ज करेगा, मैं ये दर्ज करूंगी. जैसे मुझे लगता है विमेन वॉक एट मिडनाइट अपने आप को सड़कों पे दर्ज करते हैं, उसकी फोटो लेते हैं, लेकिन सड़कों को हमारा एक एहसास हो जाता है. कितनी बार, लाइक इट्स अ क्वेश्चन दैट आई हैव, हाउ मेनी टाइम्स डू यू हैव टू वॉक on the streets for them to continuously then remember you? And I think even one walk starts that process, then the street remembers you. आप इसको मिटा नहीं सकते. एक बार जब ये हो जाता है, तो जितने ढाबों पे गर्ल्स जाके बैठी हैं, उतने ढाबों को उनका एहसास है, और उन सब लड़कियों को उन ढाबों का एहसास है, और उन शामों का, दोपहरों का एहसास है. ये चीजें मिटती नहीं है. अब बात यह है कि इनका रिजल्ट शायद हमें बहुत आगे जाके मिलेगा. आई ऑफन थिंक ऑफ सफरेज, ये तो सफरेज के बारे में भी कहा जाता था ना बहुत बार कि ये कैसी डिमांड है कि औरतें वोट करेंगी, हालांकि अलग तरीके से बोला जाता था वो. इट यूज टू बी फ्रॉम अ डिफरेंट, फ्रॉम द अदर साइड. एज इट इज आवर क्राइसिस की हम अपने में काफी लड़ते हैं आजकल. लेकिन किसी ने कुछ तो सपना देखा था और उस सपने को पकड़ के रखा था और धक्का मारते रहते. और मार मार के मार मार के मार मार के मार मार के आई एम ऑफ द ओपिनियन दैट व्हाट आई एम पुशिंग फॉर इन ऑल प्रोबेबिलिटी आई वोंट बी अलाइव टू सी what it actually does, like the pivot of that. That's my sense. I might
But
be
you're
wrong.
alive to live it. Like
Hmm?
I'm going back to that poking of patriarchy. Like every person, like Malika, when she's walking, when you're experiencing the change. So what else
I,
is needed?
what I'm trying to speak of is how structurally change is understood, discoursed upon, and documented. Of course,
Why
like I
did
said,
Sharma ji
every
ka uncle tell us कि ये जब तक structural change नहीं होगा वो valid
हाँ,
नहीं है?
ये इसका
I'm
आई
responding
थिंक
to the criticism.
या
I'm responding to the criticisms that come our way and
Hmm.
what I think of them. Like, I
Mhm.
feel like I don't think I will be alive to see the change that this thing
Mhm.
was. Doesn't mean that I'm
हाँ,
not keep doing it. तो इरेजर अपने एक्सपीरियंस का तो हो नहीं सकता. वो अपना काम
Mhm.
करता रहता है, करता रहता है, करता रहता है, करता रहता है. और
Mhm.
वो आगे चला जाता है. वो कहाँ
या
कहाँ जाता है वो भी हमको मालूम नहीं है. This is what I think.
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest criticism for women walk at midnight is the class and caste privilege of the women who are walking, of me, for example, also.
Mhm.
अब इसको मैं झुटला नहीं सकती.
हम्म
ये है. क्या मैं बोल दूं कि नहीं नहीं ऐसा नहीं है? नहीं नहीं, ऐसा है. अ, और ये जरूर है कि मेरी कास्ट और क्लास प्रिविलेज की वजह से रात को चलना मेरे लिए कुछ और लोगों से ज्यादा आसान है. इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि एब्सोल्यूट आसान है, ये नहीं. इन कंपैरिजन हाँ है, थोड़ा मेरे लिए शायद सहूलियत और है उसमें. बट आई थिंक पावर के साथ जिम्मेदारी भी आती है. और मुझे लगता है कि पावर के साथ जगह हथियाने की एक अपॉर्चुनिटी भी आ जाती है. और वो हथियाना जरूरी है, धक्का मारना जरूरी है. एंड माय फ्रेंड अनायता said something so beautiful that I've never forgotten it, but I have kind of forgotten it, so I'm going to paraphrase it. She said that we have to know when to take the mic, when to take the mic to pass the mic, and when to leave the stage altogether. And I think I try and hold on to this in some ways. And I was talking में ज़्यादा बोल दिया.
Yeah. आई थिंक ये डेली जैसे जैसे हमारी प्रैक्टिसेस ग्रो करती हैं, ये क्रिटिसिजम्स के साथ हमें जूझना पड़ता है. एंड that I agree with both Malika and Surbi, right? That we have to respond to the criticisms and speak the language of the discourse, but it's also important to imagine an alternative discourse. And I think that is the power of collectives like these, that we are imagining an alternative discourse and an alternative world, an alternative way of everyday being. But Sadia, I also want to throw this open to you about you ran girls at Dhabas for a certain period of time and then sort of eased it out. What happened? Were there challenges you faced? Because we all face those challenges, right? कि इसको करते कैसे रहे इस काम को?
Yeah,
Uh,
or what Malika said, you have to know when to leave the stage. You have to know, and you have to know when the stage is exhausted. उसका उसकी कई वजूहात थे, if I'm honest, and different days the story feels different, but the dissolution or the dissolving, it wasn't like ugly या कुछ लड़ाइयाँ, बस बहुत ही organic तरह से वो group जो है ना खत्म हुआ. और हमने कोशिश की उसको resuscitate करने की और उसको बट जबरदस्ती में काम सही नहीं होता है. तो आई रिमेम्बर एक्चुअली कॉलिंग जस्मीन ऑफ ब्लैंक नॉइज. आई वाज लाइक, no, ये खत्म हो रहा है, Girls at Dhabas is ending, and she's really a mentor figure but also a friend. और ये अच्छा, ये इंटरेस्टिंग बात है, मैं बताऊंगी आप लोगों को कि गर्ल्स एट ढाबा की सबसे ज्यादा क्रिटिक पाकिस्तानी फेमिनिस्ट से आई है, and a lot of them are older and a lot of them are also part of a socialist feminist party, but also not, like it ranges, it really ranges. इंडिया से हमें इतना प्यार मिला, इतना प्यार मिला, एंड आई थिंक दैट्स बिकॉज उस वक्त गर्ल्स एट ढाबास के अलावा इंडिया में ब्लैंक नॉइज था, वाई लॉइटर था, आई थिंक वुमेन वॉक एट मिडनाइट या था, या उसका कुछ वर्जन कुछ कुछ चल रहा था उस वक्त। तो वो एक सॉलिडारिटी बहुत ऑटोमेटिक और अज्यूम्ड थी, जो कि एक बहुत खूबसूरत, यू नो, व्हिच इज व्हाई दीस कॉन्वर्सेशंस, एंड यू नो ये भी हम मतलब बैठे हैं despite everything, like feminist solidarity across border for me is such an act of resistance given the halat of our nation states. So okay, I went on a tangent there, I forgot what I was talking about. um
How did it disband?
how did it
Challenges.
disband? Yeah, disband, the band left. um लोग जो कोर ग्रुप था जो वो चला रहा था, उनकी जिंदगियों में बहुत चीजें हो रही थी. Some people left for masters. I was going through a whole other thing where मेरा जो रिश्ता था सड़कों से वो बहुत डैमेज हो चुका था, because there was an incident of violation on the streets that I don't want to get. It really shook me. So I was kind of, you know, not really present with the cause, so to speak. दिल से नहीं आ रहा था मेरे लिए कुछ भी. और क्योंकि ये एक structured group नहीं था, it was volunteer basis, there was no kind of institutionalizing of it. Then we were thinking there was basically a choice before us कि या इसको हम एक structured शक्ल देते हैं जहाँ पे रोल्स डिफाइन हो और ग्रुप का, यू नो, या हम इसको इसी तरह जाने देते हैं या हम देखें क्या करें. दूसरा एक ये मसला था कि उस वक्त गर्ल्स एट ढाबास मसला नहीं, बट एक ये रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी वाली बात थी कि वी वर, यू नो, a well followed group. We had about 75,000 followers on Facebook, and we were very active in feminist discourse, both in terms of giving language to things that were happening, reacting, and also thinking of what do we create. तो अब मुल्क में चीजें हो रही हैं, communities में चीजें हो रही हैं, but we were not really active, you know. तब आपने एक जगह पकड़ के रखी हुई है, लोग देख रहे हैं उसको, and people are hoping, you know, to engage, but we're not really doing much with it. So that felt irresponsible also. And then concurrently Aurat March was happening. So the thing we were talking about before, with शक्ल बदल जाती है चीजों की. अब मैं अपने आप को ये बोलती हूँ कि you know, it's okay, it just takes a different form. And if you look at everyone who was not just part of the core group, but the larger kind of peripheral communities also around girls at Dhabas, that language, that work, that concern, that dreaming is continuing. वो सपने देखने वाला काम रुका नहीं है, बस उसकी शक्लें मुख्तलिफ हैं. And I'll just go back to the point I was making. I called Jasmine and I was like, ये खत्म हो रहा है, ये क्या करूँ मैं? You know, I was really distraught. And she said, you know, Sadia, some things have a cycle, and you have to know when that cycle is ending, and it'll come back in a way you don't know, you don't expect, but just trust that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Hey,
but
you and I
that's
met. That's a great part of the return of the cycle.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, with Project Basanti, मैं सुरभि को कह रही थी पहले, to me, when I first saw it, it felt to me like with Girls at Dhabas, कुछ चीजें हमें clear थी, कुछ हम अभी भी, you know, language articulation पहुंचे नहीं थे. So when Surabhi says time, leisure, labor, I'm like, okay, that's it. That's what we were trying to get to, you know. So बहुत affirmation मिलता है कि ये एक तो ये भी सोचना ना कि मेरी एक individual या एक individual collective की वजह से ये हो रहा है, ये नहीं, ये कोई ये मिलके हो रहा होता है. मुझे तो थोड़ा इस तरह भी लगता है कि चीजें घूम रही होती हैं हवा में और हम बस रास्ते में आ जाते हैं, यू नो,
Yeah.
टकराव हो जाता है, तो वो मिलके ही हम फेंक रहे होते हैं हवा में या हम रिसीव कर रहे होते
Yeah, but I think it's very critical to understand in the social change space. What does success really mean? I mean, again, introducing a new language, introducing a new gaze. तो जब आई थिंक मलिका बोल रहे थे कि क्या है हम, ये प्रोडक्ट है, ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है, कलेक्टिव है, मुझे तो लगता है सोचने का तरीका है. आई मीन दैट्स हाउ आई थिंक वुमेन एट लीजर, लाइक इट्स जस्ट देखने का तरीका, सोचने का तरीका उसका. क्योंकि और narrative building is actually a systems building tool. Like it's not something we are just saying systems building, is actually well documented systems building tool, right? क्योंकि तुम्हारे पास जब तक गाने नहीं होंगे, भाषा नहीं होगी, तो तुम सोच को कैसे आगे बढ़ाओगे? सोच को आगे नहीं बढ़ाओगे तो 10 innovation कैसे करोगे? And in that sense, women at leisure didn't start as an act of resistance. I mean, a lot of people report about it in media as an act of resistance. I never do. I've never in my writing used it as resistance. For me, it was curiosity. Like it is still a deep, intense curiosity. Resistance byproduct है उसका. कोई औरत सो रही है इसलिए नहीं क्योंकि उसको रेजिस्ट करना है, वो सो रही है क्योंकि उसको सोना है. और उसको सो के फिर क्या रिवील होता है वो मेरे को जानना है. उसको दुनिया में घूम के क्या निकल के आता है वो मेरे को जानना है. नॉट बिकॉज आई वांट टू फाइट पेट्रियार्की. अगर पेट्रियार्की नहीं भी होती तो भी मुझे जानना होता. बिकॉज आई एम सो क्यूरियस अबाउट द इनर लाइव्स that we don't get to see usually, and I'm very curious कि अच्छा क्या निकल के आता है. तो every photo that comes to me, usually the photo comes to me, and I mean, right now I'm the only one who runs the page, and I've always been the only one who ran the page, but I always reply to each photo that comes. Tell me more about it. And I read every message in response to that. और वो ना तुम रेजिस्टेंस की आंख के साथ भी कर सकते हो, और करते भी होंगे लोग, और मतलब उनके कारण हम जहाँ खड़े हुए हैं हम खड़े. पर मेरे लिए वो क्यूरियोसिटी का कीड़ा ही होता है कि अच्छा ये औरत के दिमाग में क्या है. I'm wanting to know, you know.
मैं सोच रही थी थियोराइजिंग और उसको एनालाइज करना और वो सब अपनी जगह ठीक है, और कभी कभी वो कुछ ज्यादा ही हो रहा होता है क्योंकि हमारे ऊपर जितने पेपर लिखे गए हैं और जितने आर्टिकल लिखे गए हैं उतनी औरतें शायद ढाबों पे नहीं बैठी होंगी. आई एम कंप्लीटली ऑनेस्ट. So you know, when you ask like what is the measure of success, and I think because we are in this patriarchal capitalist दुनिया, like the measure of success is also के कितनी scholarship हुई है, कितना वो, but
exactly.
औरत का वो जो मोमेंट है जब वो सो रही है और वो क्या महसूस कर रही है, like that it really begins and ends there.
So that's what I was. यही तो मैं मलिका को भी बोल रही थी कि if someone is telling her or someone is telling women walking at midnight कि तुम structural changes कुछ नहीं लेके आ रहे हो, हाँ तो नहीं लेके आ रहे. आने के लिए थोड़ी सड़क पे चल रहे थे क्योंकि मन कर रहा था. तो जो वो मलिका जी रही है या जो महिमा जी रही है while walking, वो क्यों नहीं significant enough है. मतलब again that's the poking of the patriarchy ना. The worth of a initiative is only good enough when it has reached 1 lakh people. किसने बोला? कैपिटलिज्म ने बोला.
बिल्कुल.
तो और again हम इतना अगर ब्लैक एंड व्हाइट में जाएंगे, अगर एक्सट्रीम्स में जाएंगे, लाइक इफ यू डोंट एक्सप्लोर द ग्रे ऑफ थिंग्स, वी आर नॉट गोना फाइंड अ बिग रियल लाइफ ह्यूमन इनसाइट. तो जरूरी है किसी को तो 10 लाख लोगों तक पहुंचना, जरूरी है किसी को तो करोड़ों लोगों तक पहुंचना, जरूरी है किसी को सिस्टम्स चेंज में पूरी जिंदगी निकालना. पर वो जरूरी नहीं है कि वो मलिका हो, महिमा हो, या सादिया हो, या सुरभि हो, है ना. तो पता नहीं है, मतलब मेरे को तो अभी भी विमेन एट लीडर का लॉट ऑफ पीपल आस्क व्हाट इज द नेक्स्ट. आई हैव आइडियाज बट आई पोस्ट ऑन दैट पेज व्हेनेवर आई फील लाइक. Like the Vogue article, which was such a big deal, and TEDx talk, which was such a big deal, I posted them on the page after Aparna, and she's in this call. When she came in my life, it was Vogue article I published like a year after it had gone out. Guardian article was the first one when page was not known. And Guardian was the first publication that published our thing, apart from Feminism of India, जिसमें मैंने लिखा था, but Guardian was the first official journalism, whatever, and that got posted after 4 years on the page. Because again, it's जब मन करेगा तब डालूंगी ना यार, क्योंकि वो मेरा लीजर है. कि तो पेज कब सक्सेसफुल होगा जब 100 के पहुंच जाएंगे. अरे नहीं, वो तुम्हारा प्रॉब्लम है, वो मेरा प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. I mean, वो मेरी एस्पिरेशन नहीं है, you know. And if I start doing that, I'll snatch my own leisure.
Yeah. Just a time check. We have about 15 minutes maybe. But also if anyone has questions or reflections, please chat में डालिए, and हम उन बातों को भी उठा सकते हैं. मलिका,
They can also unmute themselves and show their face.
Yeah.
Like really.
I'd also love to see some people and your faces, everyone. Chota group, it would be nice.
Yes.
Hi, everybody.
I'm going to post on my page about I miss men in these conversations. Like I genuinely do. मर चाहिए यार थोड़े से लाइफ में, यहाँ पे आके बातचीत तो करो यार. सारी औरतें भला मर्द अपना भला क्यों नहीं कर रहे हैं? Like why are they not thinking about themselves? I feel sad for them.
Malika, did you want to come in with something?
Yeah, I just want to say, कि ये शब्द जो है curiosity, resistance, एक मुझे ये भी लगता है कि everybody accesses language in a completely different fashion, and they access language from how they have lived life. It's the same thing. My curiosity is your resistance is my curiosity. And we have to be able to see that words are interchangeable. And kind of look at how the interchangeability of these words actually strengthen our enterprises. एक मुझे ये लगा. दूसरा, success is an interesting thing because we are talking about getting covered, we are talking about being written about, we are talking about structures and systems that shine a light on you, right? Actually, you are saying that here's where we were shown a light on, and here's when the light shone on us, and we have 75,000 followers, or we have these things, and we, there's a light on us, and that light is in some ways, अब उसको success बोल लो, attention बोल लो, importance बोल लो, काफी सारी चीजें बोल सकते हैं कि ये है. इसको हम हटा नहीं सकते, झुटला नहीं सकते ना, कि ये तो है, हमारे ऊपर एक लाइट है ना. हम मतलब जो भी हमारे ये इनिशिएटिव्स हैं, और उसके साथ फिर हम क्या करते हैं, कैसे करते हैं उसको, क्या हम कैसे मोड़ते हैं, कैसे मरोड़ते हैं, उस प्लेटफॉर्म को हम कैसे यूज करते हैं, क्या बोलते हैं, क्यों नहीं बोलते, इसके साथ हमारे पास बहुत पावर आती है. और ये खराब बात नहीं है. I have stopped looking at power as a lot of times power is looked at as a dirty word. I don't see it as a dirty word at all. I feel like सत्ता तभी डरती है जब आप थोड़ा सा धक्का मारने के लिए ताकत रखते हो, तब डरती है सत्ता. मुझे लगता है कि केप टाउन में हमारा एक चैप्टर विमेन वॉक एट मिडनाइट का है, एंड इट्स अ फैसिनेटिंग चैप्टर. इट स्टार्टेड इन 2023. हम यहाँ पे ना दिल्ली में, बैंगलोर में, फरीदाबाद में बड़े छोटे छोटे हमारे काफी चैप्टर हैं. 20 औरतें, 15, जो सादिया कह रही है कि जितना लिखा गया है उतनी औरतें इकट्ठी नहीं हुई है, जितनी रजिस्टर करती हैं, हालांकि उससे वो कभी वी नेवर हैव ह्यूज नंबर्स. केप टाउन, एवरी वॉक 80, 88, 95, we are flabbergasted. तो when I speak to the Cape Town people also, हम समझने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि यार ये क्यों और कैसे और किस तरह और क्या हम नहीं कर पा रहे हैं, so it's a you have to resist this framing of success when it comes to this. I have to resist it and say कि नहीं, this is not, come on, how can you compare? They are two completely separate parts of the world. But you start getting these preconceived some things in your mind, which then you have to undo and say, no, that's not what it is. Just because they are 80, it doesn't mean they are more successful. It just means they are more attended. Not even more well attended or less attended. They're just more attended.
And also, what is more risky or leisurely, to have 100 people walk together or 5? And I found the walks where जहाँ मैं 4-5 औरतों के साथ थी, उनमें मुझे ज्यादा मजे आए, क्योंकि हम ज्यादा बदमाशियां करते थे, और it felt more regular, and जस्ट कि हम सैर पे निकले हैं इंस्टेड ऑफ कि हम झुंड बना के निकले हैं. पर खैर, मुझे ये भी लगता है दैट वी नीड टू एंगेज विद द डिस्कोर्स, क्योंकि जब हम इन चीजों को मेन स्ट्रीम नहीं करेंगे, इन कॉन्वर्सेशंस को, इन विजुअल्स को, डिस्कोर्स बदलेगा कैसे? पैरेलल डिस्कोर्स चलते हैं, मगर वी ऑल्सो नीड टू डिस्टर्ब द मेन स्ट्रीम डिस्कोर्स by making these conversations happen much more, right? I lost the thread.
So I have a thought about ये success वाली जो हम बात कर रहे हैं ना, एक तो visible होती है ना, एक तो that which is visible and what you can measure कि चलो इतने photos हैं या इतने लोग हैं या अब ये social media accounts में, I don't know how it is like for you and for women at leisure and women walk at midnight, but girls at Dhabas का जो inbox था ना, कोई उस पे एक thesis लिखे एक दिन, I really just the number of women and the range of conversations, the range of solidarity, what is happening in that inbox. कभी कभी हमारे दिन उसमें जाते थे, you know, just from everything from just a conversation about like leisure के, you know, मुझे ऐसे लगा मैं आज गई, मैं फोटो नहीं भेज सकती क्योंकि मेरी फैमिली को मसला होगा, लेकिन मैंने आज ये किया और ये मेरी जूतों की तस्वीर है आपके लिए या मेरी तस्वीर है आपके लिए। एक ये होती थी, एक होती थी कि यार अबॉर्शन के लिए आपको पता है हम कहाँ पे जा सकते हैं, हमें लगा कि हम आपसे पूछ सकते हैं। So you know, this I just think we need to, I really I haven't thought about this, but ये जो success वाली बात है, yes, and I agree with you, Nanny. I think the reach is important and we shouldn't be scared of that. Like कोई वजह है ना कि लोग जुड़ रहे हैं और मैसेज कर रहे हैं और आपको ट्रस्ट कर रहे हैं और कुछ अनस्पोकन अनकही एक ट्रस्ट एस्टैब्लिश हो रही है, and that is खूबसूरत to me, to be able to create that, to be able to co-create that kind of trust and community with I don't know how to categorize this, right? I don't know how I would give language to ये किस तरह के रिश्ते हैं।
But Sadia,
um,
that's what you're
yeah.
hitting on. I think मुझे जो लग रहा है ना, I mean, I'm not against this limelight. Like here I am
Hmm.
sitting with everyone, right? Like, but I was talking about me as a project and me as an individual. That for me, I was not seeking that, and I'm still not. तो इसका मतलब ये है किसी दिन I'm like मैं कभी कभी सोचती हूँ ना मैं इंटरनेट पे कैंसिल होंगी क्योंकि अब तुम इंटरनेट पे थोड़ा बढ़ रहे हो तो कैंसिल के लिए प्रिपेयर हो जाओ, है ना? तो किसी दिन होगा and even if the page goes to zero, आई थिंक आई बी मुझे दुख होगा कि बहुत प्यारा प्रोजेक्ट है वो हो रहा है, पर आई थिंक इंटरनली सुरभि विल बी सॉलिड क्योंकि and that's the difference I was saying. For me, resistance and curiosity are not interchangeable necessarily in all contexts. Curiosity can lead to resistance, resistance can lead to curiosity, but to me those are two different state of minds. So for me, women at leisure didn't start as resistance, and which again I'm emphasizing, I'm not against resistance. Like anyone who know me would say कि कर लेती है लड़की, है ना? और in fact life का ये पूरा काम is around something, but women at leisure was not an act of resistance. I started it, I know it, the feeling with which I started, I know the mood in which I started, I know in the mood in which it flourishes. To me it's still the resistance bit and the defiance bit is a byproduct of what at least the creator of women at leisure is trying to do.
ये शायद इसीलिए आपका चल रहा है और हमारा थोड़ा बंद हो गया क्योंकि
जरूरी नहीं है, जरूरी नहीं है
no, I'm being funny, but
सनी आपका मेरे सबसे बड़ा की डिफरेंस है, you ran and same with women at midnight, you guys are running a physical collective, like actually people meet physically. That's a very different energy than, so to me reframing कि एक सक्सेस है कि स्ट्रक्चरल चेंज कब आएगा, अगर वो आपके लिए वो मायना होता तो बात सही है। जैसे मेरे लिए विमेन एट लीजर पे जेन्युइनली सक्सेस का मायना ये है कि यार मैं ये पॉलिटिक्स ऑफ क्रिएशन कहाँ तक खींच के आर्टिकुलेट कर सकती हूँ, पहले खुद के लिए फिर दुनिया के लिए। तो पेज नंबर सो फार हैवंट रजिस्टर्ड, कोई आके बोलेगा आप स्ट्रक्चरल चेंज नहीं कर रहे हो तो मैं बोलूंगी हाँ यार नहीं कर रही हूँ, मतलब will not bother my ego at all. हाँ सही बात है नहीं कर रही हूँ, क्योंकि कुछ और मेरा तो मसला ही कुछ और है जो इंटरनल है ना। तो व्हाट इज द सक्सेस, तो आई थिंक केप टाउन वाला भी बहुत प्यारा एग्जांपल मलिका वाज सेइंग, एंड मैं वही सोच रही थी कि सवाल ये है कि उनका बेहतर कैसे हो रहा है, ये सवाल ये है कि और क्या क्या कर सकते हैं, बिकॉज वहां पे एक बाहर दिख रही है ना एक तरीके की। सो द क्वेश्चन फॉर मी इमीडिएटली वुड बी अच्छा यार और बाहर क्या क्या हो सकती हैं। So reframing success, that is also again finding your own politics of creation. Anyway,
बाकी लोग जो आए हुए हैं उनमें से कोई कुछ want to share, speak, ask, join?
Go ahead, Yashika.
Thank you so much. I was just listening since the start from the stories the speakers have been sharing and the other viewpoints. So I just wanted to add here one thing, that the beauty of this conversation was the fact that though there are different opinions, but some the way the conversation is being weaved, from the diversity to coming to like a common thread of just understanding each other's opinion, and maybe uh, just seeing that, okay, maybe at some time we might have thought like this, but if somebody is reflecting on it and giving another viewpoint, that can also be a way to look at it. So that was really important, like जिस तरीके से सुरभि अपने ओपिनियन बता रही हैं, एंड सादिया और मल्लिका ने जैसे ऐड किया है उन कन्वर्सेशंस में. I think my evening is made just by joining this conversation. So thank you so much for just adding your ideas to each other's, and making this a space of pleasure for us to just listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Yashika. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
मेरे को लगता है ना, एक रातों की बातें मुझे ना
हाँ,
डिबेटिंग मुझे
किस
बहुत फेमिनिस्ट डिबेट्स, वी नीड डिबेट, लाइक डिबेट विदाउट कैंसलिंग ईच अदर, लाइक आई
Yeah, we do a full parliamentary style debate with
wow.
referrals.
वी रियली नीड ऑक्सफोर्ड स्टाइल डिबेट, जहाँ पे मतलब करो, एक मुद्दा उठाओ और एक प्रो बनो एक एंटी बनो और फिर घिसाओ उस पे,
मैं सुनने आऊंगी.
इट्स विल कम
I'll come listen, okay?
आई कीप डूइंग दैट इन माय हेड कि अच्छा ऐसी डिबेट दिखेगी, ये टॉपिक पे डिबेट करेंगे, बट
बिल्कुल.
I think that makes me feel कि ना, it's again urban feminist spaces में failure की जगह नहीं है,
Hmm.
and if without failure innovation won't happen. So if you want the next leg, again this is all my politics of creation in my head, that if we don't allow failures to each other,
Yeah.
saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing, like genuinely allow it and not discard that person from the community and hold them in कि नहीं, तू मेरी ही है, पर तू देख ऐसे सोच रही है, like don't think like this, no, ऐसे ऐसे सोच के देख. तो
और ये
वो
ज्यादातर, yeah, sorry.
हाँ नहीं, that's all.
ये
Exactly.
ज्यादातर I think the women-led initiatives पे ही ज्यादातर ये मतलब सौंपा जाता है कि oh why aren't you perfect, why aren't you airtight, why aren't you. आज ही हम एक सेशन था पार्क में for a different thing, and we were literally the session was about just resting in the park, and then we were writing together. कोई लेट रहा था, कोई चल रहा था, तो उसमें हम बात करते. My friend Maham, who's an artist, and she said a really she gave language to this thought I was having कि हमें लगता है कि कोई point of arrival है और वहां पे पहुंचना है, कि ये डेस्टिनेशन है और यहाँ पे सारे फेमिनिस्ट स्ट्रगल्स, क्रिएशंस, कलेक्टिव्स को पहुंचना है, बट यूर देयर इज नो लाइक दिस डेस्टिनेशन that we have to get to, right? You are discovering and stumbling and recreating and then changing the limits, negotiating the limits or dreaming new limits of what this destination looks like. But it's not a destination in that sense. लेकिन उस पे पहुंचने के लिए failure is so necessary, allowing each other to stumble, allowing our language to fail. There are ways I talk about girls at Dhabas now that are different, right? The language is different. क्योंकि शुरू में language बस जो समझ में आ रहा था, वो जो मल्लिका बात करती थी, वो आप वो इस्तेमाल करते हैं. And then and why loiter I will name here because उनकी किताब ने हमें इतनी language दी, and then this cross border solidarities that define, change the language, and you do it together.
Yeah.
I think this debate idea is good. If you can referee it, Surabhi, then
समय किसके पास है, that's
कोई नहीं,
ultimate
we'll get it together. Because I think disagreement एक बहुत अहम चीज है किसी भी पॉलिटिक्स को
yeah.
जन्म लेने के लिए, right? It's the starting point of a lot of articulation and political articulation.
Yeah.
And I also just want to maybe bring in this other. Oh, sorry, Paramita, please go ahead if अगर आप you want to
Hi.
share.
I was actually thinking about something, and Surbi, I actually really like you, and I really love your initiative a lot. And I was thinking about this. आपकी जो story थी, and आपने कहा कि it's only after your mother had passed away that you started becoming curious about her life. And I was thinking that I mean, there were obviously reasons why you were not curious while she was alive, and I think that is also perhaps connected to leisure in some ways. Like, you say that क्योंकि आप खुद की पढ़ाई में बहुत busy थी, you were, all the time like trying to get things and achieve and had milestones and goals that you had to reach. And so you didn't really pay attention to her in a similar way. And not that when you started the project that you were in leisure professionally, or I'm sure like because you were doing Sanchez Apna at that time, and you are also building something else, but perhaps with maturity or with experiences, you were able to compartmentalize or something. And in my mind, it's that is the way in which I connect actually what Malika said of resistance, like that compartmentalization that, my time ends here or the work ends here, or actually I'm not able to articulate what I wanted to say, but
You did. No, you did. So
uh,
what I'm hearing is that you're saying कि जैसे I'm insisting on, I'm pushing back on the idea that resistance was in the aim. Resistance हो रही है. I am acknowledging that. I can't deny it. I also talk about it. But that's not why creator Surbhi created that. है ना?
yeah.
So you're saying to what Sadia was also saying and Malika is also saying कि ये इतना interconnected है कि आप अपने दिमाग में you're creating a boundary कि ये दोनों अलग अलग है, but in some sense they're connected. मैं सही सुना?
Yeah, absolutely.
ठीक है. And I think I take that point. And again, जब ये दोनों भी बोल रहे थे, I take that point. I do want to just make one tiny, I don't know. The reason I didn't pay attention to my mother was not because I was busy. I had a very carefree childhood. We didn't have money, but parents gave full on, like, जो करना है वो करो, as long as it doesn't cost us anything. खाना और I mean they used to say सेहत के लिए पैसा है और किताबों के लिए पैसा है. So we actually I had a very carefree, abundant childhood. I think the reason I didn't pay attention to माँ और वो क्या थी क्यों थी is primarily कि वही जो एक conditioning है हमारी कि किसको हम तवज्जो देते हैं ना. वर्थ इज एसोसिएटेड सो मच विथ इकोनॉमिक लेबर, इकोनॉमिक प्रोडक्टिविटी. तो माँ तो घर चला रही थी, घर बना रही थी, 4 बच्चों को पाल रही थी, तो माँ तो रोज ही करती है ना. वो पापा हैं जो बाहर जाते हैं, बाहर से काम करके आते हैं. पापा का हम I was the kid, whenever my father's bike would enter the mohalla, I would go outside the door and make sure कि I'm there to pick up his bag. तो माँ को तो झाड़ू मारनी पड़ती थी मुझे कि काम कर लूँ मैं. माँ को नहीं बोला कभी मैं पानी ला के दे देती हूँ, राइट. तो दिट इज एसेंशियली दैट कंडीशनिंग वाज प्लेइंग आउट प्रॉपर तरीके से कि she was always there and she was working so hard, but her work, when you don't notice labor, you don't notice the absence of leisure, है ना. क्योंकि पापा जब टीवी देखते थे रात में, and I love my father, he's been so wonderful to me in so many sense, but पापा रात में टीवी देखते थे जब, तो हमारा काम होता था डिस्टर्ब नहीं करना पापा को. क्यों? क्योंकि थक के आए हैं. और माँ, my father used to read newspaper in the morning. He used to get so immersed in newspaper कि आप उनके बाजू में बैठ के बोलोगे ना पापा सुनो ना, he'll forget to respond. And माँ के साथ ये था, तुम घर में कहीं से भी आवाज लाओगे मम्मी, and she would respond. So the reason why it didn't happen, I think again, this is all when you get the language and then you're able to frame it and reflect on it. But yeah, I hear you that they're not separate, but they still don't, like, the resistance doesn't define my success still. Saje mein maybe yes, the non-profit that I'm creating, but not at Women at Leisure. Like, in my heart I'm very clear. Or let me reframe it. Women at Leisure in my mind would fail when I stop creating. I don't feel inspired enough to create. अब वो कोई देख रहा है कि नहीं देख रहा है वो सेकेंडरी है मेरे लिए. दिस इज अ वेरी इंडिविजुअल टॉक. दिस इज नॉट अ कमेंट्री ऑन हाउ एवरी कलेक्टिव शुड रन और इनिशिएटिव शुड रन.
But I agree with you also कि resistance is actually it's a byproduct. It's something that is happening only because it's gendered. क्योंकि अगर मर्द लेट के सो रहे हैं तो वो तो resistance नहीं है. तो now every time now, sometimes I'm very aware that what I'm doing is intervening or challenging some mainstream notion of what it means for me to exist on the street, and I kind of go out with that power suit and full like prepared for it. That's a different day. Some days I just want to walk or cycle, and it's not be
See,
extracted into a statement on feminist politics or like. So I think ये एक unfortunate, I don't know what to call it, but this is just part of the baggage of being a feminist in this दुनिया, कि आपका हर एक्शन मतलब वो एक माइक्रोस्कोप लगा हुआ है ना, anything you do is up for meaning making by everybody else, right?
ये थोड़ा सा डिस्कोर्स की मार्केट की भी प्रॉब्लम है ना, एंड आई एम यूजिंग दैट फ्रेज वेरी वेरी केयरफुली. देयर इज अ मार्केट, है ना, देयर इज फंडिंग अटैच्ड टू सर्टेन काइंड projects, certain kinds of discourses. I mean, there is a larger system at work that defines what is important, what is political, and what is not. So, I mean, like 10 years ago, I was very close to the word empathy and compassion. But now empathy and compassion is a market. तो आप वेट करो थोड़ी देर, अभी रेजिस्टेंस लोग को नहीं अच्छा लग रहा, और क्यूरियोसिटी, अभी क्यूरियोसिटी यूं पकड़ के घुमा ली जाएगी. मतलब फाइनली मुझे लगता है कि our own vantage points and our own ethos notwithstanding, finally I think language is a political field, and language is unfortunately in many ways a political battlefield, you know. I mean, our own articulations are, all three projects are, except the word dhaba, all three projects are articulated in English, and find a lot of articulation in English. And at least women work at midnight में, मतलब मुश्किल लगता है, या मुश्किल नहीं है एक्चुअली, बट मुझे लगता है कि उसकी जो लिखाई है और उसके बारे में जो लिखाई है वो मैक्सिमम एक पर्टिकुलर लैंग्वेज में होती है. तो मुझे लगता है कि शब्द, which is why I'm thinking about this quite very much now. There is a politics of discourse, there's a politics of the language that is defining that discourse, and there's a system behind it that keeps it up. I'm a theater artist, and it's very good to see how this works out in the arts. What is considered political and what is not considered political art. So I have made a piece right now, very much in the strain of somewhat what Surabhi was saying about collecting a memory of a lost person. This is not considered to be political. It is not considered to be समथिंग जो कि पॉलिटिक्स से रिलेटेड है. मुझे लगता है पॉलिटिक्स और टॉपिकल ये शब्द अलग शब्द होते हैं, और शायद कभी कभी ये हम वो कर देते हैं. बट आई मीन, yeah, I mean, that's it. Some meandering thoughts. Thanks.
Someone raised their hand.
Yeah, and I would just like to, sorry. Are you saying
Yeah.
something, Surabhi?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, you raised your hand. Oh, okay.
No, I just wanted to add to, because I've been listening for a very long time, and I relate to a lot of it, especially what Surabhi said and what, of course, Adi also mentioned. So what I have a thing that I always, because I'm an academician and as well as a practitioner, and what I feel is that there are certain words like resistance and जिनका बहुत ज्यादा रोमांटिसाइजेशन हुआ है, और जिनको आई डोंट नो व्हाट हु डिफाइंस दिस रेजिस्टेंस. कौन तय कर रहा है कि कौन सा एक्ट रेजिस्टेंस कहलाएगा और कौन सा एक्ट रेजिस्टेंस नहीं कहलाएगा. एंड व्हाई आई एम सेइंग दिस इज बिकॉज, फॉर एग्जांपल, हमारे यहाँ क्या होता है कि कुछ औरतों की जबरदस्ती शादी होती है और वो औरतें अपने आप को कुछ कर नहीं पाती, बट वो क्या करती हैं, वो गीतों के जरिए अपना रेजिस्टेंस दिखाती हैं. तो वो गाती हैं, और वो ऐसी गाती हैं कि जैसे गाने अब्बा काहे को ब्याह मोहे पर्दे, और ऑल ऑफ दीज. सो आई फाइंड दीज स्पेसेस ऑफ ट्रांसग्रेशन वेयर वुमेन फाइंड दीज लिटिल स्पेसेस. तो एंड ये औरतें आम मर्रा की औरतें हैं, इनके पास अंडरस्टैंडिंग नहीं है क्या कलेक्टिव होता है, क्या एक कम्युनिटी, मतलब क्या ये प्रोजेक्ट्स चल रहे हैं, इनको कोई पता नहीं है कहाँ क्या दुनिया में हो रहा है इस तरह से. बट ये इनके लिए ये एक रेजिस्टेंस है कि ये, और शायद ये इस वर्ड को भी नहीं जानती रेजिस्टेंस क्या है, बट ये सिर्फ इनका ये वो करना कि हम नहीं, हमारी शादी हमें पता है कि हमारे खिलाफ होगी, हमारे इख्तियार में क्या है, हम ये गा के तय करवाएंगे कि हम इसके खिलाफ हैं, और जो आप कर रहे हैं ये गलत है हमारे साथ. और आप हमें कहते हैं कि हम पब्लिक में नहीं आएंगे, लेकिन वो लोग अपने छज्जों पे चढ़ जाती हैं और वो कहीं से कूद जाएंगी उसमें मर्दों की स्पेसेस में, वो कहीं से, तो they try to register themselves in these spaces which are otherwise forbidden for them. And I see these sites as sites of resistance. And I see that ये छोटी छोटी liminal spaces हैं जहाँ पे औरतें अपनी एजेंसी को ट्रांसग्रेस कर रही हैं, बट कोई मीडिया उसको रजिस्टर नहीं करेगा, कोई आप ये आमर्रा की नॉर्मल जिंदगी की वो लड़ाइयाँ हैं जो ये औरतें लड़ रही हैं, और हम इनको कहाँ पे कैसे रजिस्टर करें. फॉर एग्जाम्पल इन माई वर्क आई एम ट्राइंग टू ब्रिंग इन दीज थिंग्स, बट I'm also failing because I keep getting this. But how are you relating it with the larger politics of the world? How are you relating with the oppression that Muslim women face? I said, but why do I have to? Why can't this in itself be registered as a work of resistance in itself? So these are also the things that I think we need to think about when we talk about things like privilege and power and yeah. And I'm not denying the fact about I'm too much like very much. अगर मैं ये कलेक्टिव्स नहीं होते तो शायद मेरे को और मुझ जैसी लड़कियों को जो एक डिफरेंट वर्ल्ड से आ रहे हैं ऑल टुगेदर, उनको शायद ये लैंग्वेज ना आती है डिकोड करने की. शायद वी वुड नेवर हैव अंडरस्टूड हाउ टू चैनलाइज आवर वर्क इनटू और आवर एक्सपीरियंसेस इनटू आवर प्रैक्टिस. So I think these are very essential also. But I'm also talking from a very different like these are also sites where we need to address as
I think it's
otherwise we
अमन, कितना
we
अच्छा गाना तुमने उठाया है, क्योंकि इसकी लिरिक एक है, भैया को दीन हो बाबुल महला तो महला और
हमको दियो परदेस. This is actually one of the Khusro's songs which lot of these women sing. And why do they sing them? And why do they sing on these occasions when they are being separated from their families, especially on weddings? So these songs are very much songs of resistance.
Oh yeah.
And they're never seen in those lights. So I mean, of course now, I mean, और इसका बहुत वो है कि इस तरह के बहुत गीत हैं जो, in fact now I'm working on transgender community and I've realized there's a high use of these sexually explicit language. They're outrightly speaking about like देखो मुझे and that, and I was in shock to see all of that, but where are they? What is happening to them?
Aman, you're asking, and I think Malika was trying to touch on it too, that how do you build a feminist creation with a feminist vision in a very patriarchal capitalistic world? और वो डांस है ना, जैसे what I think Malika was mentioning कि फंडिंग एक तरीके की चीज़ों के लिए आती है, एक तरीके के शब्दों के लिए आती है, right? And in now what you're saying is कि एकेडमिक दुनिया में डिफाइंड है थोड़ा सा पर्सपेक्टिव कि रेजिस्टेंस क्या है, और वो जब तक इतने लोगों तक पहुंच रहा है तब उसको हम बोलेंगे, और इस तरीके से पहुंच रहा है तब हम उसको बोलेंगे दिस इज वैलिड इनफ टू बी डॉक्यूमेंटेड इन अ जर्नल. And then it's a big part of decolonizing a lot of these things, creating enough solidarities that actually women who understand this have the power to fund also. Just say again, I also run a non-profit which takes all my life and energy in it, and it's all in gender issues, rural development, and a lot of our funders are men, and which is again I don't have a problem with it, but मैं बहुत बार सोचती हूँ कि अभी भी हमारी औरतों की टीम भी पूरी औरतों से बनी हुई है, और ऑटोमेटिकली वैसे हुआ मोस्टली औरतें आ गई हैं, एंड जो काम करते हैं वो भी यंग औरतों के साथ करते हैं पूरा डे इन एंड डे आउट, बट पैसा जहाँ से आता है वो अभी भी एक तरीके से आता है. तो मैं कभी कभी सोचती हूँ कि वी नीड मोर विमेन अप देयर, ताकि थोड़ा तो डाइवर्सिटी आए ना, क्या एजेंडा आगे जा रहा है. और बहुत प्यारे प्यारे फंडर्स आते हैं जो इंटरेस्टिंग एजेंडा को आगे ले जाने के लिए तैयार होते हैं, बट यू आर आस्किंग अ वेरी वैलिड क्वेश्चन कि व्हाट डज इट टेक, कि मैं ये रेजिस्टेंस को डिफाइन करने का ही रेजिस्टेंस चल रहा है अभी तो. सादिया, आप कुछ बोलना चाह रहे थे क्या?
तो नहीं, मैं सुन रही हूँ. I mean I hear, I don't have anything to add as such. कोई और?
I think time check हमने 1 घंटा सोचा था, उससे तो
What is
ऊपर
the time?
It's 9:06 here, so I guess 8:35, 8:36 for you, Sadia.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think just in the interest of, and I think that's the last thing that I want to say, that a lot of this is also very fatigue inducing. It's not easy to talk about leisure and to talk about it either as resistance or for it to keep at it. And I think just in that spirit of um, not making it exhausting. We should put it. We should have a follow-up
Exactly, maza aaya.
conversation for sure, maybe.
Huh?
Yeah, no, this is fun. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
This has been really
Maza aaya.
heart-touching, heart-invigorating. Yeah,
दिल से बात हुई.
दिल से
हाँ.
बात हुई. हाँ, हाँ. और ये जबान वाली कॉन्वर्सेशन जो मुझे लगता है अभी हमने सिर्फ छेड़ी है. बहुत
हाँ.
प्यार है. And also what Malika was saying is how language is politicized, right? And um deliberately, and the way that it is, we might, or I don't know, there are words that I feel like हमें लग रहा है हम मिलके सोच रहे हैं, and then they get obviously co-opted. And so we have to keep, wow, dreaming and creating new language also, Surabhi.
वो
को
तो करना ही पड़ेगा.
हाँ, बिल्कुल, बिल्कुल.
पर पता नहीं, मैं तो बार बार उस पे बोल रही हूँ. आई नॉट जस्ट बिकॉज इट्स रेजिस्टेंस, बिकॉज यू वांट टू क्रिएट. एंड अगेन रेजिस्टेंस के लिए भी करना उसकी भी जगह, बट जेन्युइनली बिकॉज तुम्हारे मन में वो भाषा आ रही है, क्योंकि तुम
हाँ,
हाँ.
हाँ.
और क्यों, और जैसे कि नैनी ने चैट में बोला कि इट्स ऑल्सो, शायद हम रेजिस्टेंस नहीं सोच रहे हैं लेकिन सोसाइटी हमें रेजिस्ट कर रही है. जो आई थिंक काफी एक पावरफुल थॉट है, टू थिंक, टू रियली इन्वर्ट द लॉजिक एंड द कॉन्वर्सेशन कंप्लीटली. तो बहुत सारे इंटरेस्टिंग स्टैंड्स निकल के आए. जस्ट टू, आई कैन नॉट समराइज दिस, नो वे, बट बहुत सारी ये जो डिसएग्रीमेंट्स, मुद्दे, चैलेंजेस, बट ऑल्सो अग्रीमेंट्स जो निकल के आए कि क्यों ये जरूरी है, क्यों ये हमें करना है, क्यों हम ये करते हैं, व्हाट मोटिवेट्स अस, ये क्यों एक डिस्कोर्स का पार्ट है, लेकिन क्यों एक अलग डिस्कोर्स भी है, एक नया सपना हम सब देख रहे हैं. What is the space of language, of class, of our position, or where we are coming from in all of this? Where are we going from here? Where do we stand in the discourse, or where does the discourse stand for us? But also, I think questions of space. I think we didn't touch upon that a lot today. कि जब सुरभि बोल रही है कि वो आंगन में बैठती थी औरतें, हम ढाबों पे जब बैठ रहे हैं, हम सड़कों पे जब चल रहे हैं, एक शहरी, लाइक अ वे ऑफ अर्बन वे ऑफ लाइफ, व्हाट इज इट, एंड वेयर डू विमेन finds this space for solidarity. लेजर एक solidarity का, एक गॉसिप करने का जरिया, एक दूसरे को समझने का जरिया, बट ऑल्सो एक स्पेस, actual physical space को अपना बनाने का जरिया भी है. And I think that's something that we didn't discuss as much today. And we should definitely have more conversations and more crossovers like this in the future, and we can set this up and take some of these conversations forward and really dig deep into some of these tangents. Thank you so much, everyone, or everyone who stayed till the end. But especially thank you to Sadia, Surabhi, Malika, Aman, Aparna, for all your participation and candid conversation. End में I think we can leave it open for another 2 minutes. किसी को कुछ और अपनी reflection share करनी है, बोलना है, सोचना है, तो
Thank you, Mahima.
Yeah, thank you, Mahima,
As
for
always.
making for making this
Mahima,
happen.
I was very curious to hear, get to know your thesis. Is there a way to access it? You said that you've
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it will be publicly available. Well, I submitted in 22. So by end of this year, it will be on public, like the entire thesis will be available. But I can tell you about it. I did my thesis was on women's leisure spaces in Delhi and Agra. And my case study one was Women Walk at Midnight. But the other case one was low income settlement in East Delhi, जहाँ पे ये जो गलियां होती हैं वहां पे कॉट्स पे बसिया लगा के जो औरतें बैठती हैं, एंड हाउ इज दैट देयर स्पेस, एंड a very volatile neighborhood that I was studying. So there were a lot of कि अरे उस मोहल्ले में वो बिरादरी रहती है, तो वो चोरी चकारी करती है, वो सेफ नहीं है, बट हमारी गली सेफ है. So it was it's a research on the whole safety framework, but also for women, where do these spaces of leisure exist? What does leisure facilitate? And so similarly in Agra, the case study was a low-income settlement जो जमुना किनारे है, और किस तरह जो जमुना के साथ रिश्ता है वो टूट गया है, खास तौर पे औरतों का, क्योंकि नदी किनारे एक गैम्बलिंग का अड्डा बन चुका है मर्दों के लिए। लेकिन औरतें बताती हैं कि हम घाट पे बैठा करते थे, हम ये करते थे, वो करते थे। अब अगेन यहाँ पे भी आगरा की उसमें भी वो एक बसिया जो है, एक कॉट्स, उनके आंगन में कॉट्स, एक शेड कोर्टयार्ड में कॉट्स, गलियों में कॉट्स, आई हैव बिकम छत has become their leisure space. And the whole articulation of फालतूपन, कि हम फालतू बैठे, and also how फालतू is translated ना, कि is फालतू idle time or is फालतू wasteful time, and is फालतूपन purely leisure or is it leisure and work? So all of that, so and the broader
commentary on your character also sometimes.
Yeah, exactly, कि
No, I definitely would love to read your thesis.
Yeah.
If
So
this
it's
the WhatsApp
framed by academically, it's framed by debates on citizenship and right to the city.
Yeah, so I mean definitely this is my interest area. मतलब ये तो मुझे जानना है क्या हो रहा है इधर. तो would love to get it whenever you it's
Yeah,
publicly
and one
available.
of the Agra case study will be published. It's under publication in a journal, so that will be out in another 2-3 months. I'll share
Nice.
that with the group.
Yeah. Hey, this knowledge production happens, then hopefully something what Aman is trying to do at some point gets, you know, like the knowledge production is also a way of systemic creation of what counts as resistance and what doesn't, right? Very
एक
nice.
चीज हमारे लिए बहुत, एक दिल्ली शहर के लिए तो एक बहुत बड़ा सोर्स ऑफ इंस्पिरेशन इन रीसेंट पास्ट रहा है in looking at women in public spaces, and that actually was the CAA protest. जहाँ पे सैकड़ों 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 औरतें बैठी रहती थी सड़कों पे, दिल्ली के बहुत सारे कोनों में, और उनकी जिंदगी चल रही होती थी, वहीं पे बच्चे खेल रहे होते थे, वहीं पे वो सो जाती थी, वहीं से वो उठ के घर जाके काम करके वापस आती थी, वहीं हंसी ठट्ठा होता था। और मुझे लगता है कि हम लोग की इमेजिनेशन में, मतलब विमेन वॉक एट मिडनाइट के लिए भी, मतलब मेरे लिए खुद के लिए पर्सनली भी, और मुझे आसपास बहुत सारी औरतों के लिए ये मोमेंट पिविटल रहा इन अंडरस्टैंडिंग public spaces, women occupying all these threads that we've spoken of ना today, articulation, language, सबकी धज्जियां उड़ा दी थी इन्होंने, कुछ और ही कर गई थी, कुछ और ही हो गया था यहाँ पे. It was
very powerful.
हाँ, ये मिटेगा नहीं.
हाँ, आज भी जब मैं शाहीन बाग मेन रोड क्रॉस करती हूँ, मैं नोएडा में रहती हूँ और दिल्ली जाना होता है हर दूसरे दिन, ऑल्दो सब पेंट वेंट कर दिया है, सब जितना भी ग्राफिटी वगैरह आया था ड्यूरिंग द प्रोटेस्ट, एक है दैट मेमोरी ऑफ सिटिंग ऑन द रोड देयर विद men experiencing that community of care, of resistance, of just sitting. I think that will stay.
Yeah.
The streets remember.
Yeah, the streets remember. Okay, dosto, let's sign out. Yeah.
I would like to take one picture with everybody's consent. If it is, then I'll just take one picture.
Yeah.
People who are behind the cameras, if you want to like come out.
दिखे हैं, अब तो दिखा दो चेहरा. I can't believe people have stayed, which is beautiful.
Okay.
So nice to see everyone's faces.
I just changed the view. I had like a anyway.
Okay, I'll click one second. So this is all. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
No, one sec.
Oh.
स्क्रीनशॉट ले लेते हैं ना.
हाँ, ले लिया मैंने वैसे एक.
किसने? ओके, सॉरी, डन. थैंक यू.